Bob's chords have a unique musical quality that makes every song feel richer and more dynamic. But it's not just the shapes he plays, it's the way he approaches them that gives his sound so much character. In this video, I'm going to break down what he's doing and how you can use the same approach to make your own chords sound more musical. So let's start by hearing some chords played in a super common way versus how Bob would approach them. So for the example I'm using, which is Ship of Fools, by the way, what are the chords, right? So I was going to do the verse for this, but there's a lot in there. And just to simplify, I thought, you know what? Let's just do the chorus section because there's just 4 chords there. And it's just F, right? E flat, B flat, and then it does it again. F, E flat, and this time goes to G minor, which, by the way, is the relative minor of B flat. So B flat and G flat, they're very related. Say, well, you know, I'll just leave it at that. Kind of switches to G minor, so it feels like it changes to a minor sound for a little while. Kind of a cool musical trick. But those are the 4 chords, right? You know, and a great way to think about these and how to kind of organize these chord shapes is the cage system. You know, it's so useful for chords and scales too. So if you're thinking about this shape right here, this F. If you think about E, go back here, you know, typically would never play E like this, use this, but if you're imagining barring down here, move it up 1 fret, there is F in the E shape. And then here's your A, play like this, move it up here. Here's E flat in the A shape, B flat in the E shape, so it's that shape with a B flat right there. And then G minor in the E minor shape, so here would be your G major, you just take that finger off, and that right there would be the E minor shape played as a G minor though. And those are all different voicings. So it goes back to classical times, the choral music, they call it voicing, where there'd literally be different people singing different notes. So it'd be like this voice is singing that note, that voice is singing that, and you could mix it up. Like, oh, actually, let's change it up. How about you sing that note instead? And it'd be a different voicing. So this is one way to voice in F, and you know this would be another way. That would be in the A shape, and it's the same 3 notes that make up that chord, but they're arranged in a different way, and they're also in this case higher up too. So those are different voicings. So it's the first step when you learn a progression is to first, of course, learn the chords, and then figure out what kind of voicings you're going to use, and using that cage system is a good way to kind of figure out, you know, the different areas you want to play. And to help you learn the cage system even faster, I put together a free cheat sheet. You can just grab it from the link in the description down below. And you know, while playing around with these cage shapes, our huge approach to Bob's playing, he's more actually likely to play pieces of them like this, right? Maybe up here. And these are things called triads, right? So tri meaning 3, right? So the 3-note chord, and they're the basic building blocks for chords, for major, minor, and also diminished, augmented, which you don't see too much. Although in this tune there's a diminished chord, which sounds so cool. So if you took this one right here, this F in the A shape, but you just took off the root right there, played this right here, there is your second inversion triad. You know, here's your first, your root position, the first one. Here's the first inversion, which is tricky to remember because it's not the first one, it's the first inversion. You're flipping it around, and then here you're flipping it again, and then you flipped it again back to this one here. Those are your 3 shapes. You got 3 notes, so you got 3 different ways of playing them, and you can just do that for all of them. You know, you got that F, and then here's your E flat, here's your B flat. So playing it in triads works a lot better. And you may be thinking like, that actually doesn't sound quite as good. You know, this sounds better. You have to think about in context. So when you hear just me playing on my own right now, this big full chord it might sound better than just hearing this small thin one, and it's got the the F with the root in the bottom, that B flat stuff. So you think about the context, especially something like with the Dead, where there's another guitarist, there's a keyboardist, there's a bass player who's all over the place, two drummers and stuff. There's a lot going on. So you don't want to be playing big boxy chords, which is super common. Triads is just such a great alternative to just cut right through the mix, and there's a whole lot more, as we'll see in a little bit, that we can do with this stuff. And a great way for learning the triads is using that key system again. So don't forget, the link for that cheat sheet is in the description if you want to grab that and just kind of expedite your growth with chords and with triads and all that stuff. And using these triads can instantly be more musical, but they still need to be used in the right way to get the most kind of musical, like punch out of them. Like I went to college for music and did a lot of theory and a lot of classical stuff, even though I was a jazz focus on guitar. And there was a lot of these voicings I had to learn that were particular to time periods and countries, like the German 6-chord, the Italian 4/5. I don't even remember what they were. It's kind of like if you took I took calculus in high school. I loved it, but I don't use it at all, so I've forgotten 99% of it. And I used the vast majority of what I learned from theory, but there's a lot of specific stuff, like the classical stuff, that I don't use, some of that time period stuff. But I learned about not just the voicings, but how the voicings move, and that is called voice leading. And that is the missing kind of link a lot of people don't have when they're playing, especially guitarists that play the kind of rock-oriented music. They might just play these big chords and move them around, and that can be okay, but we want to get more specific and intentional, and that's what Bob does in his playing. And you can forget all that specific stuff of the German 6-chord, whatever it is, all that stuff. If you know what it is, too, tell me, what am I talking about? I don't even remember. There was some number in there, I don't know. But I will just tell you that you can simplify it to two things with voice leading. So thinking about keeping the voicing exactly the same is useful. So say you had this shape right here, and then you just move it down right there, right? So exactly the same. So F to E flat. So each voice is moving the same, right? That can be a nice thing to do. And then the second thing, probably even more important, is to keep things close. So it doesn't have to be. If this actually happens to be close, but say you went all the way up to a C, way up there, that would be far, but it can still be a nice thing to keep that voicing the exact same shape. But keeping it close is even better, and that's a lot of what in this example that I took from some version of 74. I forget which show. It's just typical stuff Bob would be doing. It doesn't really matter which show it was that I was transcribing these specific voicings and all this voice leading he was doing. But he's got this one right here, right? And then he's going down, keeping it real close, to B flat. And keep in mind, too, he's also doing all this other stuff between. I'm just keeping it simple, just showing you just the bare bones chords, he was doing. So that it's nice and smooth and close. But then the second time, starts up here, then does that. So he does 2 on the F, right? And that makes it melodic, right? So instead of just playing, you're playing that big bar chord, you're just locked in there. So, and if you wanted to jump up to another high one, it can be a little bit too much, too jumping around. But this is nice and smooth. And then the second time starts with this one, and then does E flat like this. So instead of this E flat, this one here, then to a G minor. All you do is change that one note. So that's very different than just playing this. So again, we've got it's very intentional, and it's much more melodic, because another thing to pay attention to is the individual notes, but especially the high one, because that's the one you're going to hear. You can hear that. It gives it that a little bit of a melody, so you're moving around. So that can really bring your chords to life. It makes it so much more musical. And it's not just the chords that Bob plays. It's like how he plays them that makes them, it sounds so much more musical. And good voice leading with triads, as you can see, it's a huge part of that, but learning them all over the fretboard, it's challenging. So check out this video here where I show you the fastest way to learn triads so you can start applying them and using good voice leading sooner rather than later.